In the late 1990s, a strange silence started spreading across California highways. No engines, no fumes, no roar of combustion, just a hum, soft, electric, and full of promise. For the first time, the future wasn't science fiction, it was parked in people's driveways. They called it the EV1, the first modern electric car. It was fast, it was clean, it was revolutionary. And then, without warning, it vanished. Every car taken back, every key collected, most of them crushed into silence. This is the story of how General Motors built the future and then killed it. Welcome to Missed Futures, the series where we explore the inventions that arrived too early and the visionaries who paid the price for being right too soon. Because sometimes the world doesn't reject progress, it just isn't ready for it. And few stories prove that better than the rise and deliberate death of the GM EV1. To understand how this happened, we need to go back to 1990, a time when pollution in Los Angeles was so thick it looked like fog. The air was choking, smog warnings were routine, and California's Air Resources Board decided enough was enough. They announced a new rule, the zero-emission vehicle mandate. By 1998, 2% of all cars sold in California had to produce zero emissions. By 2003, that number would rise to 10%. It was a bold, almost impossible goal, but it lit a fire under the auto industry. Because if they couldn't meet it, they couldn't sell cars in the biggest US market. And at General Motors, one small engineering team saw opportunity where others saw crisis. GM's Advanced Technologies division had been experimenting with electric drivetrains for years. Their prototype, called the Impact, was fast, aerodynamic, and futuristic. When it debuted at the 1990 Los Angeles Auto Show, people lost their minds. Crowds surrounded it. Journalists called it the future of driving, and GM's CEO promised they'd bring it to market. That was bold, even reckless, because at that time, batteries were expensive, charging infrastructure was non-existent, and gas was cheap. But GM had something no one else did: resources, ambition, and a head start. By 1996, they were ready. The EV1 wasn't just a car, it was a statement. It had a teardrop shape for maximum efficiency, an aluminum frame for lightness, and a drag coefficient lower than a Ferrari's. This wasn't an eco gimmick. It was performance wrapped in silence. It could go from 0 to 60 in under 8 seconds. It needed no oil changes, no mufflers, no tailpipes. It was like driving the future, smooth, effortless, and eerily quiet. And people loved it. Drivers described it as addictive. They called it the car that makes gas feel obsolete. Every single person who test drove one wanted it. But there was a catch. You couldn't buy an EV1. You could only lease it. And GM made sure of that. Leasing wasn't unusual, but the EV1 program was different. Customers were hand-picked, leases were limited, and every car had tracking devices installed. It was as if GM wanted to control the revolution, not unleash it. Still, the people who got one became evangelists. They loved never visiting gas stations. They loved charging overnight at home. They loved gliding silently past gas lines and oil changes. It wasn't more than a car, it was a movement. But movements make noise, and this one caught the wrong kind of attention. Oil companies noticed.
So did auto industry lobbyists and politicians who relied on both. Because if the EV1 succeeded, it would set a dangerous precedent. If GM proved that electric cars could replace gasoline, what would that mean for everyone else? Less oil demand? Fewer repairs? Less profit? A car that didn't need oil changes or engine maintenance threatened entire industries built around those systems. So a quiet, coordinated resistance began. Inside GM, executives started to doubt the project. They complained about cost, about range, about battery limitations. But the truth was, they were scared. The EV1 wasn't just expensive, it was disruptive. It didn't fit GM's business model or anyone's. Because how do you make money selling cars that never break down? The EV1 challenged capitalism itself, a product too efficient for its own good. And that's when the pressure started building. Lobbyists pushed to weaken California's zero-emission mandate. Oil companies funded research claiming electric cars were impractical. And GM quietly shifted its tone. The very company that had once called the EV1 the future started calling it an experiment. In 2001, California, under political pressure, caved. The state rolled back the ZEV mandate. The requirement for electric cars was gone. And within months, GM announced it would discontinue the EV1. They told customers it was because of low demand, but the waiting lists said otherwise. Thousands wanted one. GM wouldn't let them. And then came the recall.
In early 2003, EV1 drivers received letters from GM. Their leases would not be renewed. The cars would be taken back for study and recycling. Drivers begged to buy them outright. They offered full cash payments, even above value. GM refused every single one. Then, one by one, tow trucks started arriving. EV1s were loaded onto flatbeds, taken to lots in Arizona, and crushed. Every sound of progress flattened into metal cubes. Officially, GM claimed the cars couldn't be supported, that battery parts were too costly, that demand wasn't there. But leaked internal memos told a different story. The company had received pressure from oil interests, and the Bush administration had shifted focus from electric vehicles to hydrogen, a move that conveniently delayed real progress by decades. The message was clear. The electric car was dead, and the oil industry lived on. In 2006, filmmaker Chris Payne released Who Killed the Electric Car? It featured interviews with EV1 owners, engineers, and even GM executives. The film painted a damning picture of corporate fear, political pressure, and deliberate sabotage. It wasn't just a tragedy of technology, it was a tragedy of timing. The world wasn't ready to give up gasoline, but it was ready to believe in something cleaner. Even as the EV1s were crushed, a few survived. Some ended up in museums. Others, stripped of batteries, were donated to universities. And in Silicon Valley, a group of engineers took notice. One of them was a young entrepreneur named Elon Musk. He'd seen the film, he knew the story, and he wanted revenge. Tesla's first car, the Roadster, used the same core idea as the EV1, but with modern lithium-ion batteries. It proved what GM had refused to admit. Electric cars weren't a fantasy. They were inevitable. So what if GM hadn't killed the EV1? What if they'd refined it instead of burying it? By 2005, gas prices were skyrocketing. Consumers were desperate for alternatives. And Tesla was still years away. GM could have owned the market.
They could have led the revolution. Instead, they handed it away. And in doing so, they lost more than a car. They lost history. The EV1 wasn't just a missed opportunity. It was a warning that innovation doesn't always fail because of bad ideas. It fails because of bad timing, fear, and power. It showed us that technology can be ready long before society is. And when progress threatens profit, the future gets delayed. For a brief, shining moment, the world had a glimpse of what could have been. Quiet streets, clean air, and cars powered by nothing but imagination. But instead of embracing it, we crushed it. And as those cars were flattened under the desert sun, so was a vision of a cleaner, smarter world. The EV1 wasn't a failure, it was a prophecy. And prophecies have a way of coming back. Because the future can only be buried for so long. Thanks for watching Missed Futures, the series that uncovers the innovations that came too soon and the people who dared to believe in them. If you believe the world should have been electric long ago, subscribe and join us next time when we explore another vision that almost changed everything.